Revealed, my daughter-in-law's unexpected outburst transformed our family dynamic forever. Sarah stood in her cozy kitchen, the rich scent of her pot roast permeating the air, a familiar comfort that spoke of home and family dinners filled with laughter. Yet, beneath her composed surface, nerves roiled. She adjusted the fabric of her apron, mind racing. This Sunday felt different, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken words. As a devoted nurse, she thrived on stability, on the routines that cupped her life neatly. But Jessica's arrival had changed the cadence of their family dinners, stirring up complications Sarah was too polite to vocalize. When Mark and Jessica walked through the door, radiant in their ambition and love, Sarah felt an unfamiliar sting of insecurity. Jessica, a high-powered attorney with a privileged background, contrasted sharply with Sarah's modest roots. Was she enough for her son's new life? The bubbling pot roast suddenly seemed somehow unworthy. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The conversation flowed easily at first, with Jessica chattering about upcoming cases, her voice smooth and commanding. Yet, a twinge of resentment flickered in Sarah's chest. Mark's pride, as evident as the framed diplomas hanging on the walls, was a constant reminder of how differently their lives had unfolded. In her heart, an inner battle raged, disappointment mixing with admiration, a fear of being surpassed gnawing at her. And then it happened. Jessica, in a moment of fiery courage, unleashed a passionate plea for her own recognition and admission of feeling overshadowed in a family that valued loyalty over ambition. The room grew tense, the silence thick and suffocating. Sarah's stomach clenched, she felt the sting of judgment pierce through the air as if her worthiness was laid bare for scrutiny. While Mark looked on, wide-eyed, Sarah hesitated. Had they always treated Jessica as an outsider? Was it her simple upbringing that bred this perceived divide, or was Jessica's ambition something more significant? All of Sarah's ideals about loyalty and family began to crumble as Jessica's voice rose, exposing the raw edges of their unspoken rivalry. Suddenly, she felt defensive, her mind racing. What right did she have to prune ambition back? Would they view her as a relic of the past? Inwardly, Sarah wrestled against the tide of her own emotions, gripped by the realization that their gentle Sunday rituals had stripped away the veneer of ease and bred discord. As the clash continued, Sarah's tongue flicked with urgency. She had to bridge this chasm between them. But in her desperation, a family secret slipped through her lips, an unexamined truth, a painful history of unrealized dreams that intertwined their lives more than either had admitted. The air crackled, silence crashing down over them like a brick wall. Now, each woman stood on the precipice of understanding, but still shadowed by mistrust and misunderstanding. Jessica's ambitions and Sarah's devotion swayed on a knife's edge, asking for redemption they weren't yet ready to grant each other. And as resentment rippled beneath the surface, there they were left to confront their lives, hopes, and stark dissimilarities. In the deepening silence, the question hung heavy: was it possible to bridge their disparate dreams while preserving the fragile threads of family loyalty? Each heartbeat echoed with uncertainty, leaving Sarah and Jessica suspended in that moment, distant yet forever inextricably linked. The weight of the silence pressed on Sarah, and in that moment, the kitchen transformed from a base of comfort into a battleground of emotions. The usual warmth that enveloped her home felt distant, giving way to the cold blades of conflict. She could sense Jessica's eyes on her, a mixture of challenge and vulnerability reflected in their depths. Somehow, in releasing that family secret, she had not only exposed a painful truth but had also unlocked a door to uncomfortable revelations. What do you mean by that, Sarah? Jessica's voice, though steady, quivered with suppressed tension. Caught off guard by the intensity in Jessica's eyes, Sarah faced a rush of thoughts. Did she dare tread further into this uncharted territory? The familiar inclination to retreat into her roles, the loyal mother, the steadfast nurse, surged within her. Yet, there was something undeniably empowering in standing her ground, in stepping outside those boundaries that had long defined her. I mean, she breathed, gathering the courage she rarely summoned, that we have both had dreams, and I know I've let mine fade into the background. Her heart pounded at the honesty spilling from her lips. I stifled ambition in pursuit of family loyalty. An expression flitted across Jessica's face. Surprise? Understanding? Sarah couldn't be sure, but the walls between them felt slightly more permeable, the air thick with possibility. I've always felt an obligation to support your father's choices, Sarah continued, her voice gaining strength. My nursing career was enough for me, or at least I told myself that. But it's true, I've envied the freedom you have to chase your ambitions. They matter too, they matter deeply. Mark shifted awkwardly, his gaze darting between the two women, his protective instincts ignited. But Sarah was beyond concerned about his comfort, her heart racing with a sense of liberation. Her expression softening, she met Jessica's fierce gaze head-on. You're not just Mark's wife, you're an individual with dreams worth pursuing. Your voice is valid, and just because our paths diverged doesn't mean we can't find common ground. Jessica appeared taken aback, a slight retreat in her defensiveness. I never meant to make you feel inferior. I want my own identity recognized. To be part of this family as my true self. Tension hung in the air, but beneath it lay a palpable shift, a chance for deeper connection, stark vulnerability juxtaposed against the backdrop of their combative history. I don't need to overshadow you, Sarah said carefully. But we could learn from each other. Imagine if we used our differences to empower each other instead of allowing them to create division. Jessica blinked, her breath catching as the reality of their potential collaboration sank in. You really think so? Of course, Sarah replied, her mind racing with new ideas. I've always admired how articulate and ambitious you are. I want to find my voice too, especially if it brings us closer together. A moment stretched, laden with the promise of change. Somewhere beneath Sarah's fear and Jessica's apprehension, liberation danced, waiting for them to take the final steps into a world where their dreams could exist side by side. Jessica nodded slowly, the resolve in her eyes igniting an uncharted path. I think we could actually make a difference together. But just as hope began to sprout, Mark's phone buzzed, breaking the fragile reverie. As they turned to him, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was just beginning, one filled with challenges and reconnections. What secrets lay buried in the unexamined chapters of their lives? And would the two women find the strength to rise above their past as they ventured into this unexpected territory together? Mark's face lit up with fervor as he read the message from his phone, momentarily pulling Sarah from the intense exchange with Jessica. While he glanced down as if the tiny screen held answers to their family's uncertainties, Sarah's pulse quickened. Their connection, however tenuous, felt more fragile than ever. The underlying current of vulnerability hung palpably in the air. What is it, Mark? Jessica asked, an edge of irritation slicing through her voice. The warmth from their prior conversation faded again, replaced by the awkwardness of the moment that he looked up, attempting to mask the enthusiasm bubbling beneath his calm exterior. Just a work update. I'll need to make a call soon, he replied, a flicker of apprehension in his eyes. The gravity of his job often loomed over familiar interactions, and Sarah felt the familiar pang of resentment it had always taken precedence. Mark's career offered stability, but at what emotional cost? While he stood on the brink of professional triumph, she felt teetering in her personal landscape. As he turned to step away, Sarah seized the opportunity to chase that flicker of motivation ignited in her hours earlier. Jessica, let us explore our ideas. Let us turn this moment into action, she said, brimming with newfound resolve. Jessica hesitated, casting a wary glance at Mark, whose focus had already shifted. Here? Now? She asked, uncertainty knitting her brow. Yes. Let us not let any more time pass without exploring this. I'll keep it simple. Let us just sit and brainstorm. Who knows where it could lead if we put our heads together? Jessica slowly nodded, a mix of excitement and trepidation passing over her features. It was unsettling yet invigorating to grasp at possibilities after a lifetime of drifting along the currents defined by others. As they settled back into the space of the kitchen, Sarah felt a rush akin to that of stepping into the nursing field for the first time, a mixture of fear and exhilaration. "Okay," she said, and the words felt like a catalyst. "What are we passionate about? What do we want to create?" Jessica took a deep breath, her mind racing but soon found a tentatively steady rhythm. "I've always wanted to help others share their stories, maybe through a blog or a podcast. To show that there's strength in vulnerability, in connection." Sarah's thoughts weaved around the idea like a tapestry, patterns forming in her mind. "That's brilliant. There's a tremendous need for authentic narratives right now. But we can dive deeper into your skills, even create a community centered around it." Excitement sparked between them, and Sarah couldn't help but think of the ways she could complement Jessica. Her own nursing experience had avenues of storytelling, patient stories, resilience, love, and loss. Her heart began to race at the prospect of merging them. As creatively invigorating as it felt, Sarah also sensed an undercurrent of fear, a nagging thought, urging her to question whether they were ready for this leap. But each moment, each suggestion molded and influenced her burgeoning confidence. With each idea tossed around, the contours of their collaboration began to take shape. Sarah envisioned crafting not only stories but a platform where authenticity thrived, where their voices wouldn't just merge but resonate on their own terms. Yet beneath the enthusiasm, a flicker of doubt gripped her heart. Was she truly equipped for this venture? The inner critic that had long silenced her aspirations now nudged at the edges of her mind, provoking inner conflict. "Can I really do this?" she wondered silently, her jaw tightening. Jessica broke the momentary spell of questioning, eyes gleaming with excitement. "What if we planned a pilot episode and see how it flows?" Sarah's heart swelled, the notion of a tangible project surged her nerves into overdrive. Together, they could explore uncharted territories, but did that truly make up for the sacrifices weighing on her heart? The question loomed large, stifling her excitement with a lingering tension. Jessica's ambition rekindled in Sarah's spirit, yet with each fragmented idea, the specter of their past still loomed, a threat to their progress. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting warm shades of dusk, the four walls of that kitchen felt alive with possibility. Yet amidst the burgeoning hope was a lurking realization: personal stakes clamored in this new venture. Would uncovering their voices unearth more than they'd bargained for? And now, with the promise of change blossoming, Sarah knew she had to confront not just the outside challenges but the internal battles she had long buried. Did she have the strength to face the shadows that lingered in her past? The answer lay just beyond the horizon of their newfound partnership. An unexpected surge of energy coiled within Sarah, electrifying her resolve. The prospect of creating something meaningful with Jessica began to unfold before her eyes, vivid and real. Yet, shadows clung to the edges of her enthusiasm, whispering doubts that threatened to tether her back to the familiar discomfort of self-doubt. "Let us lay out our ideas by theme." Her voice, though quavering, held a thread of command. She pulled a notepad from a nearby drawer, its blank pages now symbolizing uncharted territory. "How about we brainstorm several topics surrounding vulnerability? We can divide them into segments for our podcast." As Jessica nodded fervently, Sarah's heart raced. The idea took root. Projecting their insecurities into their creative endeavors felt like shedding layers she no longer wished to carry. Jessica's excitement glowed like a beacon, pulling Sarah toward a path of exploration she had long avoided. "Okay," Jessica began, her pen poised over the paper. "What about mental health? You have so many stories from your time as a nurse that showcase the human spirit, the challenges faced." Spirit. The word hung heavy in the air, rippling through Sarah like a wave. Her instinctual reflex was to push back against the suggestion. Why would anyone want to hear about the hardships faced in a hospital setting? There were countless moments she had tucked away under the guise of professionalism, but what if those moments could enlighten or foster change? True. The affirmation trembled on her lips. "I have seen so many people navigate their darkest hours. If I could share those experiences." She paused, trying to catch the fleeting inspiration. "Maybe I could do so in a way that captures their resilience." Jessica's eyes sparkled, Exactly. Think about the impact it could have. Real stories from real lives. We can interview patients, their families, even other health professionals. Heat blossomed in Sarah's chest, a mixture of excitement and anxiety. The thought of revisiting those memories, of reopening Pandora's box, felt overwhelming. But alongside the trepidation was a newfound sense of purpose, a growing belief that her voice should matter or could matter. Let us not just keep it limited to health, though, Sarah suggested more vigorously. We can branch into relationships, love, grief, all aspects of human experience. And I can provide the nurse's perspective. Each suggestion carved a path toward a vision that felt more vivid than any she had imagined before. Collaborative energy enveloped them as they scribbled ideas down. Sarah recalled countless nights spent wrestling with her yearning to create something meaningful, something that accurately reflected her complexity as both a mother and a professional. Yet, interwoven with her excitement was a creeping thought. Mark's voice suddenly echoed in her mind. Be cautious, Sarah. Don't take unnecessary risks. And there it was, the familiar voice of doubt masquerading as reason. Did she even have the right to pursue her ambitions at the expense of family harmony? Jessica's enthusiasm revealed how far she had strayed from her own foundational aspirations, caching them behind layers of familial expectations and fears. As the ideas flowed non-stop, heartbeats echoing the rhythm of newfound ambitions, Sarah caught herself peering into an entirely different world. A world where she could reclaim her narrative, where each episode could be a stepping stone towards her own evolution. We can call it untold stories. It's powerful, don't you think? Jessica's voice rose, swirling with excitement. A platform for voices that usually go unheard. The name sank deep, sparking a flicker of recognition. Untold stories, it mirrored her mission to not only share but own her past. The plate was spinning, dizzying yet intoxicating. Can we? The question fell from her lips as if grappling with deep-seated permission. Can we truly own our narrative? Absolutely, Jessica affirmed. It's time we take control of what we want to say and who we want to be. Behind that simple affirmation lay a depth of commitment that was about to pour over both of them, a commitment that could fracture the walls built around Sarah's heart. The idea of diving into the rawness of their experiences lit a fire within her that she both revered and feared, yet even the thrill of determination was dampened by the reality of what lay ahead. Was she prepared to face the complexities of her past interwoven with her ambitions? Sarah's resolve faltered for a moment, shaken by the enormity of it all. The hours slipped away, and as they penned the final notes of their initial brainstorm, Sarah understood, the challenge was not merely in the act of sharing, but in laying herself bare in all the rawness she'd kept hidden. Uncertainty lingered like thick fog, but now she could hear the unwavering call of authenticity guiding her forward. What awaited them next was an exploration that would test her resilience and redefine the boundaries of her comfort zone, compelling Sarah to confront the heart of her unresolved tensions. Would she summon the courage to face her past, or would the anticipation of public perception darken her path before it even began? The air was thick with anticipation as Sarah considered her next steps. Each stroke of the pen felt like a weight lifted, yet with every word, shadows of self-doubt clouded her vision. By naming their podcast Untold Stories, they were embarking on a journey that risked exposing more than just the stories of others. It would delve deep into her own buried experiences and fears. She leaned back in her chair, mentally sorting the chaotic mix of exhilaration and dread. What lay beneath the surface of her professional facade? Each interaction at the hospital where she worked had been a carefully curated presentation of strength, professionalism, and active caregiving, while internally, turbulent emotions simmered just out of sight. Sarah? Jessica's voice drifted in, breaking the trance. What are you thinking? Caught off guard, Sarah hesitated. I'm trying to understand the scope of what we're about to start. It's one thing to be the observer, it's another to step out in front of the mic as the storyteller. Jessica tilted her head, encouraging her to unpack these concerns. You're not just an observer, Sarah. You're a part of those stories. Those moments matter, and they resonate. It's time your voice is heard. Initiating a podcast felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. She could see the transformative potential, not just for their audience, but for herself. The idea of vulnerability was intoxicating, yet it frightened her. Was she truly ready to expose her heart and soul? What if my stories aren't enough? What if people judge me? The words slipped out, raw and unfiltered, revealing layers of her insecurities. They'll see your strength in vulnerability. That's the point, replied Jessica, her confidence unwavering. It's about creating a connection. You might be surprised at how relatable your experiences are. A flicker of promise ignited within Sarah. The feeling resonated with a flicker she had felt many years ago when she first entered nursing, the joy of touch, of connection, of healing. Yet, that feeling had been dulled by years of routine and expectation. Jessica nudged her forward. This podcast could be your way to reclaim that spark. Think about it, sharing your experience as a nurse could help others find their way through their darkest hours. It could inspire them to seek help or open up. Sarah's thoughts spun with this notion. She had seen countless patients navigate their vulnerabilities, their fear, their fragile hope. Her heart thudded violently as she remembered sitting at a patient's bedside, holding their hand as they expressed their deepest regrets and dreams. All of these moments hidden in the shadows were now begging to be brought forth. What if I did it? What if I allowed others to see this part of my life? She pondered aloud, her mind racing ahead of her heart. But then, the familiar pang of doubt echoed back. And what if they only see me as a nurse? What if they don't relate to my voice as a person? It's time to break that perception, Sarah. You're not just a nurse, you're a mother, a friend, a complex woman with a journey. Your narrative deserves to be seen, Jessica replied, her voice steadying Sarah's frantic thoughts. With newfound resolve, Sarah began jotting down ideas. Each phrase layered above the last, forming the foundation for what could become a unique community of shared experiences and exploration that could help not just others, but herself. However, as they wrapped up for the day, Sarah felt a lingering pulse of unease. Would she truly be able to confront her past? The hidden scars that each story encapsulated bore witness to more than just professional moments. They were personal battles fought in isolation, and then, echoing through her mind, the faint, critical sting of Mark's voice returned. Remember your priorities, Sarah. Would she forge ahead with this daring adventure she and Jessica had instigated, or would those critical voices restrain her once more? As anticipation simmered into a palpable tension between action and inaction, Sarah felt the tide shifting. She recognized the moment a tipping point, perhaps even a revelation. In owning her narrative, she would have to fully own her life. With that new understanding, the next step loomed larger and more significant than ever before. The time had come to confront the complexities awaiting her. Would stepping out of the shadows bring light, or would the echoes of doubt pull her back to darkness? And which emotions would emerge when she first faced the microphone, ready to divulge her truth? As Sarah sat in her home office the following day, the scattered notes from last night's brainstorming loomed over her like a dense fog. The words for their podcast episode, titled Finding Vulnerability, A Nurse's Journey, felt weighty, laden with an emotional resonance she hadn't anticipated. In the dim light of the room, she couldn't shake the sensation that she was teetering on the brink of a profound transformation. Fueled by the conviction Jessica had instilled in her, she resolved to tackle the first draft. However, as her fingers hesitated above the keyboard, doubts reintroduced themselves, sharp and persistent. What if her stories revealed too much? What if she exposed her imperfections? It would be a fine line between sharing and oversharing, a boundary she was terrified to cross. The very notion of examining her past made her stomach twist. She could recall moments of triumph and failure alike, all woven into the fabric of her nursing career, struggles with burnout, compassion fatigue, and moments of profound connection with patients. But the reverberation of Mark's dismissive words echoed in her mind. Remember your priorities, Sarah. The refrain turned into a question. What were her priorities? Certainly, she couldn't prioritize her desire to be heard above her responsibilities at home. With a deep breath, she began typing. The first few sentences flowed hesitantly, capturing her experience of witnessing the fragility of life daily. As she wrote, she discovered a rhythmic pulse in her thoughts. Each story she shared was not just about her patients, they were reflections of herself, her fears, her growth, and her humanity. Halfway through the draft, a pivotal memory surfaced. The image of a young patient, fear-laden eyes glistening with unshed tears as she entrusted Sarah with her insecurities. "What if I don't make it?" the girl had asked, voice barely above a whisper. Sarah had reached out, squeezing her hand, imparting not just comfort, but also the silent message of resilience. In that moment, she felt truly alive, connected to a purpose that eclipsed the rigors of her job. Jotting this down, she noticed a remarkable shift within herself. This wasn't just a therapy session for her patients, it was a cathartic process for her as well. The act of articulating her experiences began tearing down the invisible walls she had built around her insecurities. Authenticity surged in the space she was creating. Every sentence was liberating, a pebble tossed into the still waters of her self-doubt, rippling through her consciousness. However, the gnawing fear remained: what would their audience think? Would they judge her for her revelations? Just as she delved deeper into a memory she had tucked away, a harrowing late-night emergency as a new nurse doubt slammed against her resolve like ocean waves against a cliff. The memory was vivid, momentous, and it painted her not just as a skilled caregiver, but as a flawed individual grappling with her emotions. The door creaked open, jarring her from her thoughts. It was her son, Mark, appearing in the doorway, his expression curiously blank. "What are you up to? You look serious." "Just writing," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "About what?" "More nurse stuff." He leaned against the frame, crossing his arms, an infuriatingly familiar pose that exuded skepticism. Sarah felt a shiver of intimidation creep along her spine. Could she reveal to him her vulnerabilities? What would it mean to invite him into this part of her life? "I'm sharing my stories, Mark, stories that matter. Stories that could help," she said, choosing her words carefully. A part of her yearned for his understanding, while another braced for pushback. "Help who?" he replied, a hint of disbelief lacing his tone. With the air charged with tension, Sarah knew this was a pivotal moment. It was her chance to assert her identity beyond just being a nurse, a chance to shape her narrative, not just the narratives of others. "I want to help both them and me," she pushed back gently. "This is an important step for me, and if you can't see that." Mark remained silent, his expression unreadable. The silence thickened, and the unresolved question hung heavily between them. What would happen if Sarah fully embraced her role as both a caregiver and a willing participant in her own story? With each moment that ticked by, Sarah recognized her own transformation was now intertwined with her interactions, both old and new. As her resolve solidified into a promise to herself, she found the courage to continue. Even as uncertainty loomed, the ramifications of speaking her truth stretched before her, tauntingly close yet dauntingly far. Would her revelations bridge the gap between them, or would they widen the chasm that had started to form? The decision loomed: to step fully into her own narrative or retreat into the comforts of silence. Would she continue to push through the fears and expectations, discovering who she could become in the process? Unbidden, the question remained: what piece of herself was she truly willing to uncover next? As Sarah resumed her writing, the weight of Mark's gaze lingered heavy and assessing. His skepticism loomed larger than her fears. What she had intended to be a private journey began spiraling into a complex blend of emotional stakes. She found her fingers hovering above the keyboard once more, but as doubt seeped in again, she turned her attention to the silence that enveloped the room. In that moment, she resolved not to let her son's uncertainty derail her progress. Perhaps this was not merely about sharing her stories, it was an opportunity to exemplify the very vulnerability she wanted to portray on the podcast. After all, the essence of healing lay in authenticity, something she knew intimately from her nursing practice. Taking a steadying breath, she typed, each keystroke affirming her determination. Just as she began to gain momentum, Mark interrupted her thoughts, breaking the tension. "Why does it matter? Why do you think these stories could help anyone? They're just stories." His question hung in the air, taunting and genuine. Surely, he understood. Or did he? Sarah closed her eyes briefly, emotions roiling within her. She felt the instinctive urge to retreat, to shield her experiences from her child's scrutiny. Yet, what if the act of sharing her journey might bridge the emotional gap between them? "What may seem trivial to you is a lifeline for someone else, Mark," she answered, her voice rising with quiet intensity. These are lessons learned through pain and triumph. People need to know they're not alone. My struggles can resonate with others. Mark's brow furrowed, but then she watched as a flicker of something, perhaps curiosity, crossed his face. Invigorated by the reignited connection, she seized the moment, letting her words unravel. I've seen patients transform because they felt heard. Sharing these experiences may help someone else realize they are stronger than they think. As her narrative flowed, she noticed a change within herself. The more she expressed her motivations, the more her confidence blossomed, punctuated by a revelation. Her passion had its roots in the desire to validate others' feelings, to share the strength she'd gained from her own tribulations. Perhaps by unveiling her own vulnerability, she could also cultivate an understanding between them. Her thoughts circled back to the young patient who had trusted her with her fears. That same trust was now reflected in the precarious bond she shared with Mark. When I touch a life, I'm reminded that we're all fighting our own battles, Sarah continued. This podcast could be a platform for healing for both my audience and me. The palpable shift in the room compelled her to confront her deeper fears. Here she was, verging on a precipice, daring to voice what she had once kept hidden. Yet, the doubts still gnawed at her. Could she really make this leap? What if her revelations incited more judgment or misunderstanding? A nagging voice whispered that perhaps her son might never fully understand. Silence reigned again, this time with an air charged with possibilities. Sarah leaned forward, inviting the moment, encouraging Mark's thoughts. What do you think? Doesn't it matter to share this part of my journey? He hesitated, the walls of skepticism slowly crumbling. I guess I never thought of it that way. Encouraged by his unexpected acknowledgement, she pressed on. Part of growth is tackling what scares us head on. And I need to believe that my story can inspire. If not for myself, then for a patient who needs to know they're not alone. Mark's expression softened, and Sarah's heart surged with cautious optimism. Perhaps this was the inception of a new dynamic between them, one rooted in understanding rather than doubt. But as excitement coursed through her, a shadow loomed. What if Mark's newfound empathy was fleeting? How long could she sustain this vulnerability before facing judgment again? With her resolve solidified, Sarah returned to her draft, poised to dive further into her narrative. The tension still loomed before her, intertwining with her anticipation. This was not merely about her podcast anymore, it was a dance of recognition and acceptance. Both as a nurse and a mother, the ground beneath her shifted. What might she discover if she ventured deeper into her own story, one that might challenge the foundation of her familial relationships? With a fierce determination ignited within her, Sarah couldn't help but wonder if the next chapter was going to require not just her voice but a confrontation with the truths she had long feared. Determined, she wrote the final line of her draft for the day, asking herself, what if the truth she revealed changed everything? The flickering screen illuminated the contours of Sarah's face, but the ambient light couldn't chase away the shadows lurking in her thoughts. She felt paralyzed, staring at the blinking cursor, a reminder of the enormity of the endeavor she had chosen. In attempting to pen her truth for the world to hear, she simultaneously unveiled layers of her own existence, each keystroke unraveling the very fabric of her relational dynamics. Could she navigate the turbulence this revelation might incite? Pushing past the disquiet, Sarah drew a deep breath, steadying herself to confront what she had buried. With renewed resolve, she paused before writing the chapter that would plunge into the notorious past, encased within her heart the moment she had lost a pivotal relationship, one that still echoed painfully within the walls of her home. The tumultuous year when her younger brother had fallen ill, and subsequently, when his wife had turned against her. It wasn't just a family rift, it was a fracture that had colored every shared family gathering with tension and hesitance. How her brother's illness had become a catalyst for hostilities. Mark's unspoken alliance with his sister-in-law had made her feel betrayed and isolated. She had only aimed to provide comfort, to offer the understanding she decultivated through years of caregiving. As she typed, murky memories surged forth, those vivid flashbacks of family dinners where whispers danced across the table, most directed at her. In hindsight, her brother's decline had heightened the hypersensitivity of the family dynamics. Sarah recalled the way her sister-in-law had narrowed her eyes, the judgment shrouded beneath concern. It had stung, setting her on a path of repression that she had yet to fully confront, but now, standing at the intersection of vulnerability and authenticity, Sarah grappled with the realization that her own motivations bore complexity. Had she sought to help, or had she instinctively asserted control over the chaos brewing around them? The question gnawed at her as she wrote. By revealing her personal failures in those moments, could she start to heal fractured perspectives? Hers, Mark's, even her brother's. She crafted the narrative intentionally, entwining her emotional journey with lessons learned. Healing, she wrote, was not merely the byproduct of helping others or offering words of wisdom, but the raw act of facing the disarray within oneself. The catharsis she sought wasn't only for her audience, it was for her, so she could elucidate not only the pain but the growth hidden within those crises. Mark's initial skepticism flickered constantly in her mind as she shaped the truths lying dormant. Would he be able to see himself reflected within her words, or would he only focus on the fractures that once split their family? As she neared the concluding lines of this chapter, a fresh wave of fear struck. What revelation, if laid bare, could ripple further into her familial relationships? The shadows of the past threatened to envelop her once again. Sarah hesitated, contemplating the potential backlash from even the mere act of recalling those moments aloud. Striking the keys with newfound urgency, she formulated the closing statements, detailing her understanding that personal change could sometimes demand a sacrifice, a willingness to expose oneself to the very judgments one feared. She questioned, perhaps unyieldingly, whether facing those past demons and allowing her family to witness her raw truth would catalyze understanding or deeper divides. With her heart pounding in her chest, she read her last excerpt. In the quest for healing, I am poised to confront the moments of my greatest failures. It is time for the world to see us not merely through the lens of what we endure, but through the prism of who we could become by embracing our truths. As she pressed save, a sudden realization struck her. Diving into these depths would prompt her, inevitably, to confront not just her own vulnerabilities, but possibly her sister-in-law's as well. She felt the ground shift beneath her again. Would her sister-in-law recognize her own missteps through Sarah's revelations? The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. What if this venture not only healed her wounds but reignited the embers of connection across their fractured family? The path ahead glimmered with potential but was shadowed by apprehension. Sarah leaned back, her heart racing. The next chapter awaited her, and she knew it wouldn't just be about sharing her story. It would also involve challenging the hidden realities that had once clouded their family's love. There was no escaping it now. Would she have the courage to confront those truths, especially when she knew that healing could come at an unexpected cost? Sarah exhaled slowly, still feeling the weight of her previous revelations heavy on her chest. The act of unveiling her truth had cracked open an emotional dam, unleashing a cascade of thoughts and fears she hadn't anticipated. She had penned the chapter, yet the anticipation of sharing it loomed large. That was the undercurrent of her anxiety now. What if Mark's wife, Rebecca, didn't find healing in the words but hostility instead? Seated at the familiar corner of her writing desk, she felt the room close in around her, each item a framed photo of family vacations long past, her brother's faded baseball cap reminding her of everything at stake. They had once been markers of warmth and unity, but now felt like relics of a happier time that seemed almost unreachable. Suddenly engulfed by the urge to act, she pulled out her phone and texted her brother. "Can we talk? I'd like to share something important." The vibration seemed louder than usual, the stillness of her writing space amplifying her panic. Would Mark receive her words with a heart open to the truth, or would he shield himself against the impending heartbreak? The response pinged back almost immediately, "Sure, when?" Selected details of her narrative flickered in her mind like lightning, intense, fleeting instants that would necessitate delicate navigation. She was not just confronting Mark anymore, she was inching towards Rebecca as well, the tension between them a steady hum in the background of her life. Would the conversation yield a bridge to understanding or a chasm of resentment? Each possibility felt equally likely. As the minutes turned into hours, Sarah closely examined her feelings. While the thrill of potential reconciliation tugged at her optimism, a more profound part questioned her intentions. Did she wish to heal fractured relationships? Or was this a desperate attempt to validate her pain through shared story? She couldn't be entirely certain. In addressing her brother's behaviors, would she inadvertently cast Rebecca as the villain again? She had claimed victimhood long enough, and with every essential detail she'd written, she feared she was edging closer to re-establishing familiar animosities. After all, the truth could slice cleanly, but it could also tear further at familial bonds. Each interaction tied with Rebecca suddenly crystallized in her mind with each casual dinner who made subtle jabs, the passive-aggressive comments veiled under concern. Even the way she leaned back during tense conversations felt calculated, as if keeping a delicate balance with the expectations and emotions oceaning around them. Each moment now held the capacity to pivot relationships drastically, especially since Sarah's exploration of her own motives was underway. Tightly adjusting her posture, Sarah willed herself to plot a way forward. The desire for connection pushed her toward personal autonomy. She needed to take responsibility for the narrative she had cast around Rebecca and Mark for what felt like far too long, attempting to control how others defined their roles within her story. As she continued to prepare for the conversation with Mark, she grappled with snippets of dialogue swirling in her mind. Would she mention how Rebecca had shielded Mark's anger, or focus on her own wounds? Anxiety simmered within her. She questioned if the exchange would illuminate compassion or ignite past grievances that lingered beneath their calm facade. Time ticked on, the sun dipping lower through her window. Each passing moment was a reminder that she was on the verge of an encounter that could mark a significant shift in her family's dynamic. Finally, deep within, something began to shift. A radical sense of empowerment surged through her, commingling with the fear. Sarah recognized the discovery. She could reshape these unbalanced narratives without solely placing blame on Rebecca. In doing so, she might open a path not just for her niece's understanding, but for her own. Her phone buzzed again, a fresh message from Mark sparking urgency anew. How about today at 5? The specter of their tense exchanges loomed, but so did a glimmer of possibility. This was it. The moment had come. As she collected herself, a resolve began to solidify. The time had come to face the unspoken strains that had long constricted her family. Did she dare to step into the awkwardness of the truth? The stakes were higher than ever, and she could feel the pulse of uncertainty gripping her. Sarah knew in that moment, nothing would remain untouched after their talk. Would this conversation unearth the buried resentment or lay the groundwork for something profoundly healing? With her heart racing as 5 o'clock approached, she steeled herself for the confrontation that threatened to redefine everything. Sarah took a deep breath as she stood before the mirror, her reflection a blend of determination and apprehension. Today was the day she would confront not just her brother Mark, but the shadows of her past that had intertwined so deeply with the fabric of their family. The weight of her previous conversations with Jessica echoed in her mind, pushing her forward, urging her to stay true to her burgeoning narrative, one of vulnerability and healing. As she arrived at Mark's house, the familiar scent of barbecue wafted through the air, a nostalgic reminder of simpler times. Mark opened the door with a warm smile, yet his eyes reflected the gravity of their unspoken tensions. "Hey, Sarah." The casual nature of his greeting felt like a prelude to the weighty discussion ahead. Stepping inside, the atmosphere thrummed with potential, each moment a stepping stone toward transformation. "I'm glad we're doing this," Sarah said gently, her voice steady despite the chord of anxiety striking within her. As they settled on the patio, the sun dipping low in the sky, she felt the stakes crystallize around her. This was more than a familial discussion, it was an exploration of identity, ownership, and resolution. Mark shifted in his seat, clearly sensing the undercurrents of Sarah's intent. "What's on your mind?" he prompted, genuine curiosity laced with an edge of caution. Taking a deep breath, Sarah ventured forth. "I want to talk about our family, about Rebecca and the past few years." Each word felt like a thread, weaving together the complex tapestry of their relationship. As she treaded carefully, unveiling her feelings, an empowering shift began to blossom within her. "I felt pushed away, and I think it may stem from misunderstandings." Mark's brow furrowed. "Misunderstandings?" he repeated, the skepticism bubbling beneath his calm facade. The faint hum of the evening wind completed their charged silence. "Yeah. I've held on to resentment, and maybe I misjudged Rebecca's intentions. I didn't see how wrapped up we both were in our perspectives." Sarah pressed on, grappling with her own realizations, her heart pounding with the urgency of truth. "In trying to care for everyone, I lost sight of myself and our family dynamic shifted. Mark opened his mouth to respond but paused. Sarah could see the wheels turning in his mind, processing her words. "And Rebecca?" he finally asked. "I realize I've defined her as an adversary," Sarah admitted. "But maybe she was trying to protect you from pain. I can see how it felt in those moments, but perhaps I focused too much on my hurt to acknowledge hers." Her words felt like shards of clarity breaking through the murky waters of unresolved emotions. For a moment, Mark sat in stillness. Then he looked at her, his expression morphing into something resembling understanding. "I didn't know you felt that way. I was just trying to hold the family together," he confessed, his voice softening. In that moment, layers of tension began to dissipate. "Maybe we both had our reasons," Sarah offered, a sense of fulfillment washing over her. A bridge was forming between them, framed by honesty and growth. "I didn't mean to push you away," Mark said. "You're an integral part of this family. I want us to be closer." "Yes." Sarah's heart soared. "This journey for both of us can happen if we embrace realities instead of hiding from them." The hopeful light in her chest grew brighter, the weight of the past began to lighten. "This is why I wanted to talk," she continued. "I've been taking steps towards sharing my story outside the family. It's part of my healing." Mark took a deep breath, visibly processing. "You mean the podcast?" "Yes. Jessica and I have been brainstorming, and it's actually titled Untold Stories. It's about vulnerability and sharing experiences, fear, connection, healing," she explained. Mark's eyes widened with recognition. "That sounds powerful." "I hope so. I want it to resonate with people, but I also want it to be an honest reflection of my journey," Sarah said, her voice brimming with determination. "You're not just a nurse, look how much you care about others, Sarah. Your voice is a gift," he said softly. His validation ignited within her a profound sense of purpose. "Thanks, Mark. It feels like a big step, and there's still fear in sharing. What if I expose too much? What if our family dynamics shift again?" Mark leaned forward. "What's more important is you finding your truth. We all want to be seen, and this might actually help others confront their stuff too." Filled with clarity and hope, Sarah felt herself transforming with every shared word. They were reclaiming part of their past and shaping a new foundation of connection, a foundation forged in mutual understanding. Together, they began to explore how Sarah's journey could intertwine with Mark's, the underlying bond rejuvenated. The more they spoke, the more they dismantled the barriers that had long held them captive. Later, as twilight descended, Sarah stood on the cusp of realization. She was no longer just a caregiver to others but a participant in the narrative of her life. Every revelation, every confrontation was an opportunity to rewrite her story, moving from vulnerability to empowerment. In the days that followed, the discussions with Jessica flourished. Together, they ventured deeper into the heart of the podcast project, and Sarah discovered the exhilarating feeling of owning her narrative. Her heart raced as growth pulsed through her veins, igniting her creativity. With every episode, Sarah unearthed fragments of her past that had once felt too painful to process. Conversations became cathartic, stories transformed into healing paths not just for her, but for countless others who would find their voices through her truth. The satisfaction of each guest's revelation, each unique perspective, fortified her belief in the transformative power of sharing life's complexities. Sarah cultivated a newfound confidence, her identity no longer interwoven solely with her roles as a nurse and mother, but expanded into the valuable storyteller she had always yearned to become. And through it all, reconciliation lingered as the undertone of her journey. The bridges rebuilt, connections honored, and conversations engaged. The family became stronger for it, unified by the vulnerabilities shared rather than shattered by historical grievances. Now, as she approached the microphone, Sarah felt certainty. She had conquered her fears, demonstrated resilience, and proven that embracing authenticity not only transformed her but also rekindled the best ties with her family. The opportunity to illuminate her own story, and by extension, the narratives of many others, was a gift she vowed to honor. Sarah had stepped into her truth, and with it, found inextricable fulfillment. This was her moment of triumph. And with that, she pressed record, her steady voice resonating through the microphone. filled with the promise of connection and the unearthing of possibilities. Now, the audience awaited the journey, the untold stories ready to be shared, inspiring others to find their own strength in vulnerability. As the recording began, Sarah understood her mission, to embrace authenticity, which, in turn, welcomed transformation, her own and those of countless others still to come. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it really makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending below. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now, this is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.